I knew I wanted to come back to Illinois. I'd been all over the world. That's where my family was. That's where the people I knew were. I knew I wanted to teach in Illinois. That was kind of where my calling was. You know, thinking back to that coach that helped me, I wanted to be that for somebody else. What makes Washington so special? I guess it's just home. It's home. The people there, the community support, the character that's in that town. A math position opened up at Washington, and I was a math teacher. Tom Tennyson got me an interview, and he was going to stick on for 2 or 3 years, and then me and Nick Miller just kind of flipped a coin. And first year, I think we took last in the Mid-Atlantic Conference, and no state qualifiers, no nothing like that. And I just knew that I didn't want to feel that way. If I was going to do it, I wanted to do it right. And so.
When I first moved back to Illinois to open overtime, I got back there and I didn't realize the time I moved back was right on the tail end of that big split that Illinois had between basically the Illinois Freestyle and the IWF, and it really divided a lot of the IKBDF and the high school coaches.
So I came back from college, and literally I thought I was going to go be like a professional mountain biker out west. And my coach called me and said, "Will you come coach with me?" "Oh, of course, coach." So I moved back to Oak Park and started coaching right out of college. And I was in grad school, and I finished, and I think I started coaching the national team in 2001 or 2002. So my involvement in the national duel teams started when I was at a random tournament, and Craig Fallico was there, and I said, "Hey, do you coach the Greco team?" "Yeah." I said, "Could I come coach with you?" I was a pretty good college wrestler, you know. "Absolutely, kid." And that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
The vision, the goal was to get as many kids wanting to participate as possible and put the best teams together, figure out the system to qualify for Fargo so we could maximize the amount of kids we actually put on buses to go compete in Fargo.
I went to Fargo. We didn't do as well as we wanted to do. You know, I coached Brett Robbins in the national championship. That was super fulfilling. I figured out early on that to get guys on the Fargo team, it's much easier in Greco than it is in freestyle. And Oak Park was up and coming then. We didn't have Isaiah White and Kamal Bay. You know what I mean? So we'd like slide in, figure out what weight nobody good was at the second chance, and like move somebody up 2 weights to get them to Fargo. Anyways, I joined the national duel team with Craig Fallico. I coached for a couple years, and then Medlin came around, and then things started exploding.
There's a guy named Eric Wetzel who was actually a teammate of mine in the Marines, was running Illinois Greco at the time, and he asked me if I wanted to be the cadet coach. You saw these really special athletes, and you saw them do some pretty special things without a lot of training. I mean, my first year at Greco State, I couldn't believe kids were that good. Kids were that physical and strong, and it's funny because Tony Ramos was a cadet, and he got called first match. First match he got called. Jeff Bybee's dad was like, "He's amazing. He's a great Greco wrestler, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go watch him. And he wrestled this like tall, skinny black kid, and yeah, I mean, it was a great match. It was a barn burner, but the other kid won. And he won it in this like heroic fashion. Ended up, I went and asked that kid's name, and I asked who that coach was because he was about the same size as Jeff. So I was like, I want the guy, if I'm gonna work with Jeff, I'd like him to work with this kid who's really tough. It ended up being Ellis Coleman. Now, Ellis Coleman and Tony Ramos wrestled the first round of Greco State that year, and his coach was Mike Powell. And I think at that point, we just kind of saw a common mind together.
Bryan Medlin and Mike Powell came in and really started taking the lead in the Greco. I didn't really know Bryan Medlin at the time, but I knew the guys had a connection to him.
I came to appreciate Greco. So there's a toughness, there's hand fighting, you know, there's positional stuff, there's strategy that you don't really get anywhere else. The Illinois Greco community is paramount in why Oak Park was successful.
He was in a program that wasn't doing well, that he wanted to do well. I was just kind of beginning to decide, you know, how much I was going to put into wrestling, and I think it was just like two horses just running next to each other in the field. Like, he would go a little bit, and I would want to go a little bit more. And
he was hugely influential for me.
I think everything stemmed from the relationship with Mike Powell.
You know, there was a kinship there, but we're constantly pushing each other to be better and bouncing things off each other, sharing drills. You know, when we would have a crisis with a kid, we would call each other. We talked each other off on more ledges than we celebrated. When he was getting involved with Illinois Greco, kind of followed him in there, and
everything kind of just started rolling.
A lot of successful programs can be reduced down to how great their culture is. Can you get kids to believe in what you're spouting, what you're saying all the time? And that part is hard. Part is really hard, especially when you're building in a new place. Medlin took a program like, did anyone know where Washington, Illinois was beforehand? Probably not. You know, people in Central Illinois did. He just was like, that's where I went to high school, I'm gonna go make that a powerhouse. And he did it. Powell, we at Oak Park had good programs, but we weren't very good. Not like Oak Park is known, OPRF is known now.
You know, our freestyle team was really good, and I'm thinking, man, we got to get our best kids out. So I started walking up to them in Freestyle State and said, are you going to Greco next week? Like, no, you can't just wrestle freestyle. You've got to wrestle Greco with us. You're going to have a blast. Trust me. And then as Oak Park got good, you know, half the team was from Oak Park, and so that's an easy ask. And then we have guys that are coming to train with us. Okay, if you're going to train with us, we train one night at Greco a week.
What attracted me to Greco was Mike Powell, really. Bringing me involved and getting us going in off-season was always a really important thing.
So I had a camp at Oak Park, and like everybody had to come, everybody stayed with the Oak Park wrestlers, like we went out of our way. So if Zane Richards or Scott Penny, one of those guys was coming up, they stayed with a family, right? And then we had a big barbecue, and we did what families do, you know what I mean? Like real teams do.
We saw like instant success with those camps and that system. You know, we had a bunch of really knowledgeable coaches in Illinois. I think it was just kind of getting everybody on the same page.
And from day one, I said, guys, we're going to have a blast, and we're going to win the national title.
And once everybody was on the same page, kids would come to camp with a great basic skill set, and our high-end kids were, you know, great at the fundamentals.
It's amazing because they can get a group of 20 kids who they really don't have much relationship with other than a week of camp to buy into everything they're saying and want to absolutely go to war for them.
What makes Illinois Greco unique is community and culture. It's easy. You don't have to, there's no secret gut wrench. It's a family. It is, everybody loves each other. Those guys are brothers for life.
Guys were trying to get better and we were trying to break through. And that was the biggest thing. We were trying to break through on these dual teams. And it was year after year after year. My sophomore year, we had probably more success in freestyle than we did Greco, but it was back and forth.
I've learned a bunch. We've been watching Medlin and good guys, and watching my guys become good, and then coming back and teaching me. You know, Medlin's the guy. And we started talking every week. I mean, sometimes 4 or 5 days a week for years. And we fed off each other, we pushed each other, you know what I mean? We coached each other, and we became far better coaches together. And as a result, you know, this family of Illinois Greco was created.
And once we won in 06, it was off to races, I think. I think that we as a team all of a sudden knew we were the team to beat. And we all bought into Medlin and Powell's message about wrestling hard and wrestling for each other. And, you know, everyone has a job to do. And we had fun. We had a lot of fun. And it made it better.
In high school, I mostly worked with Powell, but one thing Medlin did do for me was he made all these highlight videos of the dual teams. Those early dual teams, like when I was in high school, like I don't know if it was 2005, 2006, 2007. He made these awesome like highlight reels from the duels, and I remember watching them over and over and over again. And back then, I remember having them on my MySpace. MySpace.
I think he saw Greco as a way for me to develop my wrestling in general. And I think Bryan Medlin's influence, looking back now that I'm older, you know, maybe when I was younger I thought he was just, oh, he's the Greco coach, you know, but a little bit more, you know, mature in the moment. He just wanted my wrestling to be better.
Man, was I lucky to have the coaching that I've had. Yeah, Powell was one of the best, and then it just kept on climbing. It was cool to be around that, and we all had the same mindset, and we were living for it.
Powell and Medlin specifically did a really great job of kind of harnessing that and getting us to break through.
I got on that dual team. It was amazing, for me. It was, Illinois is so tough, especially back then in Greco, that, you wouldn't even know how good you were. I went out there and I stuck some kid from New York and beat somebody else, and it's like, oh man, I'm not as bad as I thought.
Probably my favorite story that kind of sums up what Illinois Greco is to me is we had a team wrestle Wisconsin in the finals. Actually, we wrestled Minnesota in the semis, and it was me and Powell, which made it this experience that much more special.
My second cadet year, I wrestled both styles, both age groups. And I remember we got beat in juniors by Wisconsin. The next year, when it was juniors, and we're going in there, and we actually probably on paper had a team that was less likely to win that duel.
Thelke and Daringer, and their lineup was world caliber guys from the top to the bottom, and we had just a bunch of guys not a lot of people had heard of. We had some good guys. We had a Zane Richards or two, but for the most part there was guys that didn't go on to make these great careers.
We were doing a good job early of, I would get either a 3-0 win or a 4-0 tech, not give them the extra point type of situation. Kevon would do the same, but it was tight.
Everything was trading back and forth. Like we'd win a match, they'd win a match. Like Kevon Powell stepped up and beat one of their better kids. Then they won a match that they weren't expecting. Then Zane won. And then we got to 135, and I'll never forget it.
We got a guy, Brandon Rice, who at the time wasn't the biggest household name.
Jesse Thelke was on the other side, who at the time was unbeatable in high school, and especially in Greco. He brought the entire Wisconsin bench in, and he was like, "This is where it ends. This is where we're gonna put the nail in the coffin." And Brandon Rice, this scared kid from Washington High School, who took fifth once in the HSA state tournament, walked out there all awkwardly.
Basically his job was not to get tagged or pinned, right? It's one of those you gotta save team points, and he goes out there, they shake hands, and he just runs his shoulder into him. He's clubbing him out, hand fighting him, and he goes out and he pushes Thelke out. So he scores a point right away, and then ends the period no tech. So right now, Thelke has to pin him at this point in order to get the 5-0 victory. Other than that, it's a 3-1 loss, right? But only 2 points as opposed to 4 full points in a duel like that is phenomenal.
That's not the game plan. Exactly, and that's not the game plan for his team. He's done his job. He's done what he had to do. More than.
We all pop off. Powell and Medlin are going crazy. Brandon's not happy, but he understood his job. And you just saw the Wisconsin bench just deflated out.
I'm a big body language guy, Max. Look at the body language of Illinois. They're all on their feet. They're all jacked up. Look at that Wisconsin bench.
And from there, it was matches we weren't supposed to get techs, we were teching guys. Matches where we weren't supposed to do X, Y, Z, we were getting wins, and just the momentum of that.
A lot of hard work went into that team, and they wrestled so selflessly for each other.
I don't know if there was a moment or a duel where we weren't constantly just getting everyone motivated up and the energy of these duels up. And that started from the top down leadership, right? That was Mike Powell and Bryan Medlin, sitting on the bench, holding each other back, literally. Medlin and Powell very clearly stated that we were there to win, and we were there to win in style, and we were there to whoop ass. We're not going in there to hey, we're gonna, there might be a close duel with Minnesota at the end.
I'm with Ellis Coleman at the University of East London Olympic Training Center. We just got done with a morning workout. Ellis, you're getting down to weight. Before we talk about anything else, I got to ask you about the Cadet Nationals this year, because there's a rare occurrence. Illinois did not win the title. Minnesota knocked them off. What are your thoughts about that?
You can't win them all. You win some and you lose some, and it's harder to be on top than it is, to make it to the top. And Illinois has been on top for a long time, and holding that position, everybody that comes up and comes after you.
It's always Minnesota, and I always want to be Minnesota. They're really close to Fargo. If you're in the mix with Minnesota, you know you're in the mix to win. From a Greco side, a lot of these states don't take it as seriously. We do, so does Minnesota. So we know anytime we're going to wrestle them, it's going to be a battle, and we're going to get after it.
So I think the first 2 cadet years, whenever we wrestled Minnesota in the finals, like, all right, we're going to whoop everyone, and then we're going to have this tight duel with Minnesota.
You know, they're leaders when it comes to, you know, wrestling in the country. The Illinois, the Minnesotas.
Minnesota, man, just such a amazing place for Greco. You got guys that are Olympians and world team members. It's like all in your backyard.
And they have a lot of pride. You know, I was there, and they do have hatred for Illinois, and they got pride in their Minnesota gut, but we never paid attention to that. We didn't think twice about it.
I remember specifically wrestling Minnesota that year and beating them. We all started chanting, "Illinois gut, Illinois gut."
Minnesota gut wrench, that's like their chant, right? Minnesota gut, but the thing is we didn't beat them with a gut wrench, we beat them with defense to it.
It's not normal for you to have a world champ as your high school coach, but that was some guy's experience.
Minnesota was absolutely our #1 threat, and still is. You couldn't go in and beat those good Minnesota teams with just like going over unders and let's go body locks. You know, I think you had to have good fundamentals. You know, it kept all the coaches sharp. You know, I think it kept all of the people that were involved with the duels, it kept you sharp.
They also would talk smack about, like, we still have more trophies. We still have more trophies, but we own the last decade or two.
And people come after us and be like, well, you guys show up. Yeah, we show up every single year. We bring our best kids year after year after year, and it's all of them. And if you want to find us and you want to beat us, you need to show up at duels and you need to show up at Fargo.
1, 2, 3, everybody wants to go to Fargo. Everybody wants to get a stop sign. Yeah, so when we say Fargo, we're talking about Fargo, North Dakota, and that's where they hold the cadet and junior national tournament for freestyle and Greco. So these are, you know, high school kids, you know, wrestling for a national title in the Fargo Dome.
I hated it. I hated Fargo just because I thought the atmosphere was negative. There's a lot of crazy dads, and I just don't think I was ready for it. And some of the coaches maybe didn't have the right motives. And the first year at Fargo camp, I think I saw a lot of guys get injured. I did. We had a ton of guys get out. Guys that were really good. Dan Dennis was one of them. When me and Powell kind of decided to get more involved with the program, I think the big thing was we need to progress from the time they're done with folk style to the time they go to Fargo. If we could keep doing that, you know, have these prep camps for, you know, my development camp, things like that that we didn't really have before. And then the Fargo prep camp should be just polishing the sword.
It's the same group of guys you spent a couple weeks with battling against other states. And you go to Fargo, and that same culture continues to grow.
Fargo is a very, I think, special tournament because it brings Team Illinois all together.
It's not about the clubs anymore. It's about Team Illinois. It's about what we can do to win as a team, as a state.
So the Greco and freestyle guys are together. Guys from all over the state are together. The University of Illinois coaches are there. Other, you know, university coaches are there.
Yeah, Fargo's so unique because the atmosphere, the arena is so huge, the bracket boards, you know.
First and foremost, I always looked at it as this is the toughest tournament in the country, freestyle and Greco-wise. I looked at it as this is my opportunity to put my name down on a sheet that says I was the toughest and best wrestler that year.
The feeling for us is we had a chip on our shoulder the whole time. You know, we're always looking to prove we're the best state in these Olympic styles.
Back then, when we started winning duels in Fargo and started doing it every year, it was a pretty magical time to be, you know, Team Illinois guy.
Their success, you know, from Powell and Medlin, and that carried right over. When Alice Coleman was winning a title, I was like, okay, I can win this title.
But I know our state, these people are top notch, and I would be like flattened out if anyone was working as hard as these guys do.
It's just a great example of a high pressure scenario, big arena, big atmosphere.
I remember one year we went and drove and picked up Larry Early from Minnesota because we needed Like Medlin's like, we need those points. He needs to wrestle Greco. We need his points. He needs to wrestle. And I think we won Fargo by 50 points that year. Fargo is the tournament that always draws you back.
All right, we're here with Bryan Medlin, the USA Wrestling Cadet Greco Coach of the Year. Bryan, talk to us a little bit about Team Illinois' national title, winning another national title at the Cadet Greco.
You know, it's just a positive organization. You know, and you get those characteristics in a team. You know, you're going to start having success. You know, it took a little bit, but now the ball is rolling. And, you know, I think that it's going to take a while before it stops.
Medlin, you know, made this cool culture of Team Illinois and being something to aspire to be, you know, a Team Illinois guy. And if you're going to wrestle both styles like I did both years, you're in for a marathon. You're in for a marathon as a coach. To me, there's nothing like it.
Express yourself, release and go, attack the flow, and work it low. Express yourself, release and go, attack the flow, dip low. Express yourself, put your back in it, put your back in it, nah, put your back in it, put your back in it, nah, put your back in it, bend over, touch the flow, get low, nah.
It starts with a program. You know, I think everybody's going to kind of, 14, 15-year-olds for the most part want leadership. You know, I think everybody kind of wants leadership. I don't think that's just for little kids, but I do think, you know, getting the programs involved, like Oak Park was a dominant program at the time. We became a pretty decent program in Central Illinois. You had Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, pushed Greco for a lot of years, and you know, I think just having those programs throughout the state to pull from was important.
What you got now? Express yourself, release and go, attack the flow, and work it low. Express yourself, release and go, attack the flow, and work it low. Express yourself, release and go, attack the flow, and work it low. Express yourself, release and go, attack the flow, and work it low. You can mix it when you're clapping like a dog, not get you mix it when you're shaking like a dog.
I don't know what I think they were just special kids who decided to wrestle Greco. You know, Max Nowry wrestled Greco because Bryan Medlin asked him to wrestle Greco. Said, "Hey, would you come out on the team?" You know, and he's a world, I don't know, is he university world champ? I think so. So.
One thing, I have a lot of guys from different states ask me about this, like, how do you get your good guys to wrestle Greco? And there was a culture built, and it was like by these two guys. You know, a lot of that was Medlin, and a lot of it was Powell.
I think that feeds off of each other, and that's what you look for in a room is that intensity level. That's something that you never forget.
You know, at the end of the day, and they're phenomenal technicians, but you look around the room and you got these young kids, you know, and everyone's like kind of getting mean mugging each other in practice, and then we scrap hard, and I mean, they just made everyone tough.
Powell, with his circumstances at the time, him living, you know, for us guys, and us living for him.
You know, teaching guys that didn't have opportunities how to seize the opportunities they don't even see. Helping them off the mat, helping them with life, like being a mentor, being more than just a coach.
I tried to count how many national titles I've been a part of, and it's over 30 through Team Illinois, and that's an insane thing to think about.
They're not normal, you know, they're extraordinary. The way these guys, you know, had all these athletes' backs, the way these guys, you know, what they were willing to do as a coach. I'm just really grateful to have those experiences, and I pass them on, and I think that's what their legacy is.
You can have a great career in wrestling Greco, and Greco is something that Powell got me involved in and wanted me to do, and it ended up taking me all over the world, and something that I could have never done in folk style. And to fill up my passport before I was 22 and wrestle in these crazy countries through Greco, and to hopefully share that love with these kids as we go.
There'll be a guy to step up, is my hope. But Bryan's still involved, and it's still a incredible experience. I left the Illinois Greco teams when Harry James Powell was born. So I have a 6-year-old son. So maybe a year or two afterwards, I was fading my way out of coaching anyways. So I gave that up.
We care, and we'll continue to care, and we'll show up when it matters most at duels and at Fargo, and that's the bottom line. And I can't wait to continue wrestling Greco and continue coaching Greco as long as I can, or at least as long as my fiance lets me.
One thing these guys did was they extended it out past their team. And guys like me, I wasn't an Oak Park guy, I wasn't a Washington guy, but their rooms were open to me. And that's the sort of thing that Medlin and Powell did that we need more of.
Medlin's not going to be around forever. Maybe he will be. This man might want to go to Fargo until he's 70. I have no idea. Whatever I can do to keep Greco alive in Illinois, I will. Today in practice, I ran headlocks today. And I don't really care what other teams say. I don't care if you don't want your kids to have headlocks. My kids are going to have headlocks, man, because Greco's important to me. And I'm not going to Illinois will not let Greco die.
I don't know if there was a moment where we weren't constantly just getting everyone motivated up and the energy of these duels up. And that started from the top-down leadership, right? That was Mike Powell and Bryan Medlin, sitting on the bench, holding each other back, literally.
That's all them. They made a huge ripple, a huge wave, and it's pretty cool.
But my hope is that the guys that wrestled for us will come and pay it forward.
Talked about being selfish as a wrestler, but if you want to be a good coach, you got to be selfless. And these guys are some of the most selfless guys I've ever met.